Hello, Burbles. Today we're going to play New Witch in Town made by Grace Cards. It's currently playable as a demo, and also it's my first text adventure game. I never played a game like this before, so I'm very excited to try it out. It's starting with when you're forced to leave your endangered forest home, your grandma only gives you one instruction: keep your magic secret. But when you reach your new town, you realize you might have a chance to save your forest after all. New Witch in Town is a 750,000 word young adult interactive fantasy novel by Grace Card. It's entirely text based without graphics or sound effects and fueled by the vast, unstoppable power of your imagination. I did a bit of research here when I first started the game. What does it mean to have 750,000 words? I wanted to know how many pages this is. The quick research was like, okay, you're going to have like 150 pages. But then I wanted to compare this kind of to Harry Potter because I think it's most relatable for a lot of people since it's very much known. And my research was saying to me that the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is having around about 77,000 words. So there you can see how interactive this game is probably going to be. Then I did a bit of more research. I think it was the Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire book, which was having 190,000 words. So you can see how deep this game is going to be, I guess. But let's see. You've lived half your life in remote magical forest, learning the secrets of your magical abilities from your grandma. But after sudden news that the forest may be in danger, you're forced to move into your grandma's old house in a town you haven't visited since you were a child. When you arrive in your new town, you discover a place caught between the promise of flashy developments and the reality of gradual decline. As you begin to settle in, however, you start to notice more than a few strange things going on around you. Mysterious trees, stone sculptures, and dreams about the forest you can't quite understand. And all the while, your grandma's whereabouts are a mystery. Political unrest, long kept secrets, and complex people await you. For a young witch like you, magic is second nature, but that may not be enough to answer all of your questions. And then these are some points this game is containing. So you can play as male, female, or non-binary, gay, straight, bi, pan, or aromantic. Save your magical forest home from destruction. Get to know your potential love interest, each of whom can be male, female, or non-binary. Alternatively, choose to remove the possibility of romance from the game entirely. I think that's actually a great option here. Sometimes it kind of depends on the writing here. Sometimes it's just awkward, at least for me. Meet a wide cast of characters and forge deep friendships or keep you to yourself. Delve into mysteries or decide that ignorance is bliss. Learn the town's history and the reasons for its political unease. Find out a little family history. Choose an adorable animal familiar. Keep to the law or break it. Pet as many animals as humanly possible. Get some coffee, listen to music, change the fabric of reality as you know it. Maybe not that last one. And yeah, keep your magic secrets. Your grandma warned you. You can play the first 2 chapters of the game for free. Today, the rest of the game will be available on Thursday, January 26th. Just looking at the day today, it's around more than a month at least for me now. But it's time enough to play the demo here. It's saying that first 2 chapters are for free today, but for me it's saying play the first 3 chapters now for free, so I'm a bit confused there, but I'm not going to complain. Also, Zazu's also not complaining, as you can hear. I'm not sure if I like it that there is no in-game music, but I guess you can also just you can just listen to the music you want to listen to. But it's kind of giving you a bit of more atmosphere, in my opinion. Music is always important, so some sound effects. But we'll see. Let's see. The genders of some non-player characters in the story can either be chosen by you, or they can be randomized. Would you prefer to choose their genders yourself? Would like to choose their genders myself, no randomize their genders. I wonder what the main, not the main, but what the developer wanted me to take. Just some non can either be chosen by you or they can be randomized. randomize their genders. It is possible to pursue romantic relationships with some non-player characters in the story. Would you like to have the option to pursue romances, or would you prefer for your character not to be presented with any potential romantic storylines? Like my character to have the option of romance in this story? I would like to never be presented with any romantic options for my character. Yeah, it depends what kind of person you are, but for me it also depends how well it's written, so we'll see about that. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave the option at least open. Just one quick turn to the right. I mean left. Ugh, this key is so rusty. Couldn't Grandma have cleaned it before? With all your weight pushing on the old door, it gives way suddenly, and you find yourself stumbling into the pitch black house straight off a step you didn't even know where. You didn't know you didn't even know it was there, I guess. Quickly fling out my arms to grab onto whatever is nearest, do some fancy footwork, and land gracefully. Catch myself on the floor with the power of upper arm strength. I'm not sure if this is already giving us some differences here. I don't think so. Whatever's nearest happens to the huge stack of boxes, which immediately starts to tip over. Luckily, you find your footing in time to keep them and yourself upright. Well, that's one way to arrive. You can still see a little light outside the door, but only a few steps into the hallway you find yourself swallowed by shadows. There's just enough visibility for you to make out the stairs ahead of you, as well as the silhouettes of dozens of boxes lining the walls. The walls themselves disappear into nothingness right above where the boxes end. The only other landmark is a dark curtain hanging at the end of the hall, obscuring everything that lies behind it. Hello, Grandma's house. It's been a while, but even so, you don't remember it like this. It only takes you a moment of pawing at the wall to find the light switch. You're a little surprised when the halfway illuminates the moment you flip it, the light bulb fizzing to life with little complaint, even after more than 10 years. But while the bulb may have aged well, the same can be said for the rest of the house. You look up and notice the paper on the walls is crumbling, peeling, and spreading dampness. You turn along the hallway and see dust churning up from the faded floorboards. You can only imagine that half of the house has been packed away in these boxes, left to fester in the dark, and now, Grandma, you would probably have to unpack 13 teapots before you found a box with anything useful in it. For now, you decide it's probably best not to disturb them. The thought of unpacking reminds you to finally bring your bags in from the front step. As you had to pick them up, you stop. As you had to pick them up, you stop just for a second to take in what you can see of the rest of the twilit street. In front of you, an overgrown stretch of yard penned in by a low wall separates your grandma's house from the road and the few other houses scattered along it. To your right, you see a single house, its windows dark. It's too far away to see much except a few bright flowers growing in bushes. Across the road and to your left, there's another house. This one a little bigger, with a yellow painted door and more flowers growing up the walls. You don't need to look hard to see that your house is a little neglected by comparison. Standing out in the cool air a little longer, you try to remember the street the last time you were here. You picture yourself running from the gate up to your grandma's door before taking off to explore the wilderness that grew around the house. You remember climbing trees, letting bugs crawl on your hands, watching birds from the kitchen window, but you were too young to have noticed whether that one street lamp was broken back then as well, or whether those holes had always been in the road. You even have a vague recollection of running around with another kid from time to time, but the memory is so faint you can't really picture them. You think your grandma could probably tell you more about whomever they were, but then you remind yourself that it's just going to be you in the house for a while. You'll have to wait. Sighing, you look down at the bags in your hands. They are big, bulky, and bulging with random stuff packed in a hurry, neatly packed and clearly labeled, so I know exactly what's in them. Full of stuff I don't really need but couldn't bear to leave behind. Pretty light. I don't like to have a lot of clutter. Honestly, you mostly need yourself to get by. You waste no more time bringing the bags inside and shutting the door, leaving you and everything you own in the narrow hallway. Only now that you're closed in does it dawn on you how strange it is to find yourself in such a small space. As you stand there, however, you spot something glinting in the light that you hadn't noticed at first. A mirror, peeking out through a gap in the fortress of boxes. You step closer. With a little effort, you make a space wide enough to look yourself in the face. You smile, thinking to yourself, I know this girl. It's good to see her. I know this guy. I'm glad he's sticking around. I know this non-binary person. I'm always happy they're here. My gender and or pronouns are something else. I guess I'm going to take this one. She sings. We spoke to her. That was her reply. The house is hers. Are your pronouns all correct in these sentences? Yes, it's all correct. That's definitely her, definitely you in the mirror. After such a long day, it's good to see yourself properly again. And speaking of you, what's your first name? Anise, Cantus, Zerze, Merlin, Rain. My first name is something else. Can I choose my first name? Oh, I can. Mimi. Oh, this is cool. What's your last name? Arrowroot, Ivy Flower, Loon Leaf, Knox Tree. Mimi Bird Nest, maybe? Mimi Birds. No, I like to. Oh, wait, I made a mistake. My last name is, of course, something different. What am I going to take here? Bird Feather. Mimi Bird Feather. Where is it here? Something else. I can't take my last name. Maybe it's not working here. Bird Feather. That would be nice, though. Oh, Bird Feather. No, no, no. Bird Feather, Bird Feather. No, no, no. I like to make some changes. My first name is Mimi. So that's for sure. Then my last name is Bird Feather. Miss Bird Feather. Mimi Bird Feather. Yes, that's my name. That's right, Mimi Birdfeather. You know her very well. You hadn't forgotten your name, of course, but sometimes it helps just to remind yourself that you're still here and you're still you, no matter what else is happening. You watch yourself for a few moments, a familiar face in once familiar house, but it's not long before you find yourself unable to keep up smile. It's been a long day and a long trip back to Silvertree, back to Grandma's house, quite a ways from Albero Bello. The place you woke up in this morning feels like it belongs to another lifetime. This morning you woke up in Albero Bello Forest to green sky. At least that's how it looked through the tree needles. You could smell rain and damp soil through the open window, and when you stood up from your bed, you put your head out and looked all the way to the ground, just to see how much water was pooling around the roots of your tree. Your tree. The place where your grandma had made your home for so long. To you, it always seemed like one of the best places that witches could live. Oh, okay, I can't press the space bar. That little house your grandma hid away in the branches of a hemlock tree has been your home for more than 10 years. You're only 19, so that's most of your life, and it wasn't just a house. The forest itself, green and dark and glittering with hidden sunlight, is just as much your home. Because the deeper you go, the closer the trees grow, twisting their roots together under tangles of moss, the more the place seems to change, feeling less and less like a normal place attached to the normal world, with so much energy sleeping and seeping into the earth. The forest is thick with magic. It's there that you and Grandma have lived for so long, strengthening and honing your craft, learning how to connect your bodies with the forest around you. And you've learned how to be careful, that deep in the forest is strange, beautiful, unpredictable, restless. It's not always safe, even for witches, and it certainly doesn't belong to you. You know just enough to understand that the forest, just like magic itself, is not something to take lightly. At every moment, you need to remember just how dangerous it can be. But you've learned all about that over the years, and hundreds of other things besides. Grandma taught you well, after all. She was the one who taught you what it means to be a witch, or at least your own private definition of witch. You know that there are many different kinds of people who use the word witch, and you don't believe you alone have the right to call yourself one. When you use that word about yourself, it's simply the term your grandma passed on to you from the people who taught her. There might be better words out there for what you are, but which is simply one of the easiest ways you have of understanding it. That was just one of the many things your grandma taught you. You can't pretend to remember every lesson perfectly, but no matter how many other little things you've forgotten, you've always remembered the first thing she ever told you about being a witch. You were standing together under a broad-limbed tree, sitting together in a clearing of delicate moss, crossing a fast-running river together. I like water. It was your first night in the forest, and the sound of the water was the only thing that could drown out the chirping of insects. You were tired enough to fall asleep on the spot, but you made sure to keep your eyes open. You had just seen your grandma conjure a flower right into her hand, cast an illusion of huge fish swimming through the air, call for a crowd to land on her shoulder, ooh, create a whistling breeze that rustled every leaf around us. Even in your sleepy state, you gasped, and she smiled. But when you asked her if you would ever be able to do what she had done, she sighed and said, maybe. But those kind of tricks are just for show, Mimi. Learning to control magic. Your magic is about more than summoning crows. If you were learning to paint, you wouldn't just learn how to make one painting, would you? You learn all about colors, about how to move the brush, about light and shade. That way you can express yourself however you want. Maybe it was just your sleepiness getting to you, but you remember feeling a little confused. Grandma just smiled and squeezed your hand. As corny as it sounds, magic is part of who you are. Learning how to use it means first figuring out who you are and how magic works best for you. When you understand how it works, you can use it however you want. Focus on that part first, then you can worry about the neat tricks later. You've learned a lot about your magic since then and have even learned a few tricks of your own. You've also learned that a witch's magic binds them to the natural place they inhabit. As Grandma often told you, the natural world is the source of all magic. If a witch forms a bond over many years with a natural place, that place will become part of their being. That's why you went to live in the forest. And why you, after living there so long, you can move and change parts of the forest like they're parts of your body and even conjure small elements of it. But at the same time, just like you have no idea what's happening inside your heart or lungs, there's so much you can't possibly know about the forest. Really, that's one of the things you love about it. Of course, there are so many reasons you love the forest that it's hard to narrow it down. But if you had to choose, I think you'd say that what you love most about the forest is the chance to explore, go on adventures and get fitter and stronger, living amongst nature and learning how to take care of it. How unpredictable it is, it really keeps you on your toes. My magical bond with it. To be honest, everything fits here very well. But I think I'm going to take this one, like a druid. There's nothing more beautiful or awe-inspiring than waking up every day surrounded by nature. You've learned so much about how to live alongside it that you feel perfectly at home there, as long as you remember how to respect the natural world. Now standing in the narrow, dusty hallway, you think about something your grandma used to say, that she never feels really comfortable unless there are more trees than people around. Maybe you can't blame her after all. How do you feel? I don't know. I don't have enough experience yet. Trees are fine, but so are people. I'm happy around them too. And with grandma, I feel much more comfortable surrounded by trees. I'm going to take the grandma one. Honestly, you and grandma have a lot in common when it comes to people. But then it's not like you can go back to without warning. A clatter and crash makes you jump almost out of your skin and lands you back in the present. You whip your head around, expecting to find an avalanche of boxes, but then you catch sight of curtains swinging slightly as if touched by a light breeze. Of course, it's not just you in the house. You must have missed your familiar slipping past you as you made your spectacular entrance. As your grandma often tells you, your magic is drawn from the natural world, and so to have an animal as a magical companion only makes sense. In reality, a familiar is more like a physical manifestation of your own magic than an ordinary animal, according to your grandma. And so, by taking care of a familiar, you're really taking care of your own magic. A familiar can even very easily take the form of an animal you wouldn't and shouldn't have as a pet, which is why it is important to remember the difference. Your familiar is part of you as much as it is its own being. It's no coincidence, then, that a witch's familiar often shares some of the witch's own personality traits. Your grandma's familiar, a dark feathered crow named Karis, shares a quiet nature as well as her sharp eye. In the same way, you often find that you can see a lot of yourself in your familiar. But that doesn't stop her from being a pain in the ass sometimes. Sighing, you turn with some apprehension toward the curtain, which is now hanging perfectly still. You're feeling that isn't a good sign. Everything all right in there? No response. Even worse. Gritting your teeth, dreading whatever side is going to greet you, you venture forward. With a deep breath, you take hold of the curtain. It's surprisingly heavy immediately. Dust flies off the thick fabric, but after a second, you have it drawn to one side, exposing the dimly lit room behind it. It takes you a moment to spot it familiar. When you do, all you see at first is a pair of eyes glinting out of the dark. Turning on the light, you're met by the sight of a huge fluffy white dog grinning up at me from underneath the living room table. A tiny black kitten, eyes wide and almost innocent, staring down from the top of a bookshelf. A sleek tawny owl busy preening on the windowsill, not bothering to look my way. Of course we're gonna take the birds. Quite suddenly, she lifts her head and hoots at you in an irritable sort of way, probably annoyed that she had to push over an empty flower vase just to get to the seat she wanted. Like you, she doesn't like to waste time. Oh, God. Thought you were getting into trouble. If she picks up on your sarcasm, she doesn't show it. Maybe you should call her name just to make sure she's listening. Arctis Renoir, Fletcher, or her name is something else. I need a name now. I'm gonna take Lily. Lily hoots disagreeably, but it finally meets your eye as if she's ready to be friends. That's something, at least. So, Lily, you ask her, what do you think of the place? Lily makes a little noise of satisfaction. The living room seems up to her standards. I'm glad you're settling in, girl, but let's try and make sure there's still a house left when Grandma gets back. Lily flutters her wings in what seems like agreement. That's about all you're going to get from her. You can tell, but when you walk over to her chosen perch, she's content to let you scratch the top of her head. Eventually, a little begrudgingly, she agrees to hop onto your arm. Well, the house may be fine for you, Lily, but I think it needs a little work. Slowly, you turn around on the spot. The fact that not everything is packed away in boxes makes the living room a lot more inviting than the hallway. But there's no denying the layers of heavy dust and the edge of dampness and the cold, lifeless way the furniture is sitting around. This doesn't feel like a place to settle down in. How can you make the house a little cozier? I conjure plants to fill the room, fresh flowers, tall ferns, and cute little succulents everywhere. I start decorating with my own things as quickly as possible. Can't wait to make it feel like home. I give the whole room a thorough clean. I can't concentrate until I do. To be honest, I kind of would do everything, I guess. So. But I think plants are a good idea, they need to be bird safe though. Okay, Lily, you ready? She makes a soft, affirming noise. Closing your eyes, you reach for her head and touch it lightly, feeling her warmth. You feel the tiniest beat of pulse. At the same time, you hold your other hand out in front of you, and you start to imagine a tiny forest sprouting, taking root and growing from your palm. With Lily, a living thing under your touch, you can easily picture something else living in your other hand. Concentrating, breathing slowly. Your hand starts to tingle with life. You open your eyes suddenly and the room is filled with a green glow as plants of all kinds begin to bloom in front of your eyes. But a second later, you hear a dull flump as all of them collapse sideways on the floor on top of mounds of dirt. Glancing at your hands, you realize that apart from a little clump of white flowers, you're also holding a fistful of soil, which immediately starts to spill onto the couch. It hits you that conjuring plants might work a little differently outside of the forest. I guess I need something to plant them in, huh? After a quick run to the kitchen to grab a few bowls, you eventually have a room filled with happily fluttering plants and only a little dirt on the floor. Oh well, it's home. Now, why don't we check out the rest of the place? You and Lily make your way through the house, going from the living room to the kitchen and taking in the old stove, a plain wooden table piled with a few more boxes, on an unplugged refrigerator with the doors left standing open, and a smattering of old photographs hung on the walls where, beneath the dust, you can make out your grandma standing with smiling people you don't recognize. Apart from the house being so empty, it's almost strange how ordinary it feels. You'd never guess who lived here just by walking through it. But then, your grandma would be stupid enough to leave anything obviously magical lying around. You've lived with her long enough to know that she wants something hidden. It's not going to be found. Still, you wonder for a moment if there could really be anything interesting in all these boxes. Not that you would know where to start. Finally, you end up on the rear porch overlooking the backyard. You dig through your pockets for the other key Grandma gave you. With another stiff click, you open the door onto a wild mess of high grass, thick thorny shrubs and ancient evergreens, far taller than you remember, all in rows against the far wall. Immediately, Lily shoots out in a burst of excitement. Careful! You shout, rushing after her, before remembering that she's used to living in a forest and the backyard probably won't hurt. Now that you're outside, you watch her glide and dive through the still air, eventually landing high up in the branches of a tree. After a moment, you decide to follow her. You wait in the knee-high grass and looking down at your feet, you almost forget there is a house behind you. The ground is carpeted with dandelions, clover, dark moss, and pale flat-capped mushrooms. Unlike the indoors, which has been left to decay, the yard is thriving with life. And although it's only faint, you can sense a little magic coming up from the earth, where the weeds are pushing through. Grandma always used to love her yards, and you can see why. Standing in it now, you think to yourself, there's so much magical potential to explore. There's so much fascinating wildlife to learn about. There's so much mess. I want to clean this house up a little if I'm going to live here. I wanna get more magic. You crouch down in the grass and slowly lower your hands to the soil. You feel it then, the faint but unmistakably hum of magical energy. It's not as strong as it would be in the forest, of course, but you know that as long as this patch of earth is growing, it's also collecting magic, drop by drop, like a leaf collecting rain. Suddenly inspired, you pick the leaves off a nearby dandelion, careful not to break the stem. You hold them to your nose, breathing in the clean scent. You fold them, squeeze them tight between your hands, then unfurl your fingers to reveal empty, tingling palms. You feel refreshed, as you have just begun a bond with your new environment that you're going to do your best to nurture. Stopping again to watch Lily roam around the yard, you think back to the morning in the forest. This time, however, you remember more than just the rain coming through the canopy. You remember putting your head through the open window, looking down at the deepening puddles and hearing a voice. Not your grandma's voice, a stranger's voice, just loud enough to carry up from the forest floor. I think this is a good spot, it said, an invisible echo followed by the crunching of footsteps on leaves. We can start with the whole area. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Hopefully we'll get what we need. One of the first things your grandma taught you when you came to live in the forest was that even witches don't really understand magic. She may not have said those exact words, but that's what she meant. Learning magic is about trying to understand it. In the same way, places that are rich in magic are often too powerful for you to comprehend, and Grandma taught you to always respect that place's power. She never told you what to do when someone comes to tear that place down. Of course, when you heard that voice, the first thing you felt was terror. I just wanted to run far away and hide somewhere near I would be safe. Anger. If I could have, I would have climbed down to the ground and demanded to know what they were doing. Curiosity. The voice took me so much by surprise. I wanted to stay and listen a little longer. I'm curious, yeah? But that's not what happened. Instead, you went straight to your grandma to tell her what you heard. Lily? You call now, suddenly shivering. Let's get inside. She comes over, reluctantly, and you both go back into the house. As you lock the door, she makes a low, questioning sound, seeming to notice the change in your face. I'm okay, but just thinking about how weird it's gonna be here before Grandma gets back. Typical for Grandma that she didn't tell you where she was going. When you told her about the voice, she just went quiet, nodded, and started digging through a pot of soil. Eventually, she pressed a ring of old, slightly dirty keys in your hand. I thought it would be something like this, she told you with heavy eyes. You better go. Go to Silvertree. You'll be all right. But I think I might be busy for a little while. Wordlessly, you took the keys. You knew better than to ask, but the look on her face seemed to answer whatever question you had. The forest wasn't going to be safe not to live in, and maybe not safe altogether. She turned away in distraction, but then suddenly she spun back around to face you again. This time, her eyes were wide as full moons. And Mimi, while you're in Silvertree, promise me something. Promise me that no matter what happens, you won't let anyone find out that you're a witch. Please, make sure you always keep it a secret. You didn't have much time to process what had made her so suddenly worried. Just nodded, once again knowing better than to ask for an explanation you weren't going to get. With that, your grandma gave you one last smile and turned to leave the room with her familiar, Karis, flying at her side. All you knew for sure then, with those keys in your hand, was that you were going to have to make the best of things wherever you ended up. Now you pocket the keys again and take a deep breath. Come on, girl, let's see upstairs. It's easier said than done, though, as the first thing you see when you reach the second floor is another rampart of cardboard boxes blocking most of the upstairs hallway. You manage to clamber over. Lily follows far more gracefully and shoulder your way into the guest bedroom. As you pace over to the window overlooking the front lawn, you suppose the room must now be yours. Thankfully, at least the bed isn't a box. Back in the hallway, you pass Grandma's room, the bathroom, and the door to the attic, which you realize as you walk past. Grandma hasn't given you a key to even though it has a keyhole. You give the handle a quick jiggle. It doesn't budge. You weren't curious before, you sure are now. Try forcing the door handle peer through the keyhole. I conjure something to open the lock. I'm just gonna look a bit. Unsurprisingly, you see nothing behind the door, or rather, you see nothing but pitch black. It's the door to the attic after all. It would be weird if there was a nicely lit room on the other side. However, thinking this gives you an idea. After a quick trip to rummage through the kitchen drawers, you come back armed with a box of matches, and a couple of broken match heads later, you manage to hold up a small flame to the keyhole. It's tricky to get your face close enough to the door without burning off your eyelashes in the process, but you manage to cast some light through the little hole. Except, strangely, the light just seems to stop before it gets all the way through, as if something is blocking the keyhole from the other side. It seems that even if you had a key, there might be something stopping the door from being opened. You figure that if you're ever going to get through this door, you need to think of something other than just looking for a key. With a shrug, you move on to the final room in the upstairs hallway, right at the back of the house, Grandma's study. It's not a huge room, but big enough for a smart, white desk and what seems like a small city of filling cabinets. Every surface is stacked liberally with boxes, of course, except now that you're standing here, something strikes you about these boxes. You thought you had a feeling before, but now you can't shake it. For some reason, you're convinced there's something important in one of them. It's something about this room, about the study, and what Grandma would use it for. All the things she would lock up in these cabinets just to keep you away from. You just have a feeling that somewhere around there's something old but unspeakably powerful, mysterious but useful yet figured out, broken but with a hidden potential. I'm gonna take the powerful here. And just like that, it hits you what it is. And before you know it, you're tearing through cardboard and old tape. Nope, not this one. Why are there so many vases here? As you rip through the last box on the desk, you pause. You hold your breath. You feel a golden light shining in your face through the window as you look down, eyes watering in anticipation in all what you're seeing. Lily? I can't believe it. It's here after all this time. Your hands shiver. The room feels suddenly cold as you reach into the box. Even Lily sits perfectly still. After all this time, I found it. You wait for just a second. You lick your lips, taste electricity. At all last, you pull an old, dusty laptop out of the box. For a moment, you simply stare as you hold the laptop reverently in your hands. Then, showing the box aside, you set the laptop on the desk, and a minute later, it's plugged in and ring enthusiastically, at least that's how you choose to interpret the loudly humming fans. Soon you're greeted by a login screen with two profiles, one with Grandma's name and one with which you, to your slight horror, you realize is yours that you made as a kid. Even worse, the profile picture shows you sticking out your tongue way too close to the camera, winking with incredible intensity, trying to fit your whole head in your mouth for some reason. Yeah, you were cool. You notice after a second, however, that there is part of another face in the picture, another kid about the same age as you. Suddenly it clicks. The picture is a little too blurry to recognize properly, but you're sure that this was the kid you thought you remembered playing with when you were younger. It's a little weird to see visual proof of something you can't even properly remember. But there it is. At least the picture reminds you of one thing. The other kid was a girl. That's all you know. You can't remember her name or even how you knew each other. For a moment, you wonder idly if you'll end up running into her while you're in town. But then you push it out of your mind as get on with figuring out Grandma's old laptop. Luckily, there is no password on your profile, although you discover through definitely accidental click that your grandma's profile is password protected. Even luckier still, there's an internet connection somewhere nearby. After only a few minutes and a couple of unnerving beeps, you get online, and another minute later, the browser loads its homepage. What looks like a local news site proclaiming Silvertree today in a slightly too bright orange font. Presumably your grandma choice of homepage. Evidently today wasn't the most eventful day in Silvertree. The most prominent headline simply reads, "Local man swears tree wasn't in yard before." But then your eyes caught by the section title, "Upcoming Events." At first you only skimmed the first bullet point, but as you move further down, you feel your mouth go dry. You read it again. You read over again, more carefully this time. On Thursday evening at 8 p.m., Town Council leader Dinah Vogt will chair a meeting at the Town Hall, which all local residents are encouraged to attend. Ms. Vogt, along with other Town Council members, will take questions about local issues. Ms. Vogt is also expected to announce the date of the Town Council. A vote on the planned Alborough Bellow developments will offer residents the opportunity to voice their opinion on the matter. You sit back in your chair, fixing your eyes on the word Alborough Bellow. It's only been hours since you were there, but it already feels like another world. And the name alone catches you off guard. But as the moment passed, you realize you can't feel the hopelessness that had settled on you after leaving the forest, turning into something else. Whatever is going to happen to it, it hasn't been decided yet. Could that mean it's possible to stop it altogether? To save the forest from whatever plans that voice seemed to have for it? As you let the idea sink in, you realize this new emotion you're feeling is anger. I need to do more than just voice my opinion. Joy, the place I love more than anything, might not disappear. Or fear, what happens now? I don't know if I'm ready for a fight. At the end of the day, you're just one person, on your own in a strange town. What can you really do? What if just living here becomes impossible with so much at stake? Lily makes a low, curious sound. You stroke her head absent-mindedly while you start to think things through. You thought when you arrived that your main focus would be surviving until Grandma comes back. You didn't stop to think much about what you would be doing in that time, much less than you might have a chance to help stop whatever plans are being made for the forest before they start. How? Well, you have no idea, but maybe this meeting would be a good place to start. When you start thinking about the meeting, however, something else starts to dawn on you. You may be living alone for now, but you're not the only person in town. Sure, it's a small town, but it's still a town full of people. Even on your quiet street, there are other houses. You have neighbors, and sooner or later, you're going to run into them. The only thing Grandma made you promise before you left was to make sure nobody finds out that you're a witch. Now, for the first time, you realize there might be more to worry about. Moving into a new town isn't just as simple as saying, "Hi, I'm Mimi, I'm not a witch." You get to know people. You spend time out in the world. You get involved. At least, you think. It's true that witches are good at living on their own, but you're not sure whether it's out of necessity or preference. In fact, it is possible to feel lonely out in the forest. For you, the thought of meeting new people again is, actually, it's exciting. If I'm going to be living here, I want to be part of the town. Frightening. I find it hard being around other people, and I don't know how I'll adapt. A perfect opportunity to win over some minds. I mean, business about saving the forest. Risky, no matter what. I have to protect myself and my magic at any cost. It's still a bit frightening, though. You know, it's fine if you're not a social butterfly. You're more of a social anxious, some other kind of insect. And that's okay. You don't have to get involved with everything to have a good life here. You can go at your own pace and do what makes you feel most comfortable. Saving the forest, getting to know people, fitting in somehow with the rest of the town, and keeping your promise to Grandma. Suddenly, a week or two without her seems like both an eternity and a blink of an eye. No time to waste there, Lily. No time to waste, is there, Lily? She chirps disinterestedly. Thanks, girl. Speaking of time, you check the computer clock, and somehow it's already 7:40 p.m. The town meeting is very close to starting. You give the study another glance, taking in the dust and the furniture stacked with boxes. You have all week to make the place a little nicer. You only have tonight to make a first impression. Lily buddy, you won't mind if I head out for a while, will you? She flutters her wings and gives an unusually excited hoot. You can tell she's ready to take on the night. Cool, but don't worry, I won't let you go hungry. Feeling suddenly purposeful, you shut the laptop, the creak, the old hinge make it worrying, and hurry downstairs with Lily. You dig through your bags for her food, which you notice is running a little low, and pour some out in the kitchen next to the bowl of water. When you open the door in the back porch and set her down in front of it. Finally, you put your hand on her head and look out at the yard. You close your eyes. You think about home. When you look down at her again, she's watching you very closely. This is home now, yeah? It's just like the forest. Trees and everything, so you know not to go far, right? She makes a tiny noise. You take that as a yes. Chapter 1, First Impressions. It may be early in the summer, but the day is getting late and the sky is growing dark. Thankfully, street lamps like little yellow fireflies are coming into view just ahead. The clouds are sinking to the ground, but through the mist, a weathered sign grows bigger with every step. Since you're walking quickly, it's not too long before the tall letters peer out through the fog, clear and familiar even in the fading light. Welcome to Silver Tree. Getting to your feet, you make yourself take a deep breath. You've barely moved in and you're already heading out the door. Wow, things are moving fast today. Still, you think that's how it should be now. You're here. You're making the most of things after all. And you're determined to make the most of the town meeting by watching, listening, and taking in as much information as possible, standing up, talking, and getting involved. I'm not sure. I don't like to plan too far ahead. I'll just follow my instinct. Yep, sounds like a plan. By the time you leave the house, you know it must be almost 8 o'clock, so you don't waste time stopping to look around as you walk towards the center of town. Luckily, just a straight road, and pretty quickly, empty land and lonely houses turned into closed-up storefronts, and not much else. You pass a craft store. What a yarn! A flower shop, leaf and stem, a glossy new-looking pet store, Tall Tales Pet Supplies, and a convenience store, Silver Tree Mini Mart. They're once a little unimaginative. Still, each closed sign you pass is another little reminder that Silver Tree is a small town, though not so small that it isn't slightly eerie to be the only person in sight, lit only by the glow of few street lamps. And apparently, the further and further you walk, it's not so small that you can't end up completely lost. You walk a few more blocks, past more and more stores with no sign of any important looking buildings that could be the town hall. You're getting a little out of breath. Your footsteps seem far too loud, filling the whole narrow street. At random, you start to run at a corner. You start to turn a corner. Ah! You're not quite prepared for the sound you make as you almost run straight into another person who jumps a foot backwards, clutching a long box to their chest. Reacting immediately, you take a few quick steps backward, put up my hands defensively just in case, prepare to cast a distracting spell. Okay, I think I'm just gonna step a bit backwards here. You barely get the chance to do anything, however, before the other person starts to laugh in relief. Sorry, I didn't mean to sneak up on you, they gasped, pushing back their hair, which, as you're catching your breath, you notice is colored a pale shade of pink. You're pretty relieved to yourself that you didn't do anything too drastic, and for a moment you and the stranger share an embarrassed sort of smile. Oh gosh, my donuts! Suddenly terrified, they rush to open the lid of the box. Oh, thank uh goodness. The pale-haired stranger closes the lid, satisfied, and your insides finally untwist enough to get a proper look at them. Underneath their short hair, their faces flushed a similar shade of pink. Quite a contrast from their all black outfit, complete with vest and even a bow tie, which does at least have pink polka dots. Looking better at their face, you see their eyes have a friendly look at them, about them. If anything, though, it only makes you feel more guilty for being so scared of them for a second. I'm sorry, I should have been looking where I was going, you say at last, lowering your eyes towards the box so nearly your unlucky victim. I almost ruined your donuts. Ah, don't be silly, the stranger laughs. My wife says I should wear a bell around my neck. I'm always scaring her. That's what I get from working with animals. You learn to sneak up on them. I just didn't expect to see anyone else. I thought everyone would be at the meeting already. The the town meeting? Well, yeah, it's a big one normally. I only get a half of the dozen donuts, but I didn't think I recognize your face, so I guess you're not local, right? Not until today. Is that right? Well, I'm sorry we had to be introduced like this. Speaking of which, you can call me Maxie. They balance the donut box in one hand and offer the other for you to shake. Uh, nice to meet you. I'm Mimi. Halfway through your handshake, Maxie pauses. The hand freezes. You watch as the mouth slowly falls open. Oh, wait a second. Mimi? Yeah? The expression gradually turns to one of amazement. Mimi, don't tell me you're Anthea's granddaughter. Suddenly you're the one left stunned. Anthea's? Anthea Birdfeather? Yeah. With no regard for the safety of their donuts, Maxie flings out their arms in joyful excitement. Oh my gosh, Mimi! I haven't seen you since you were 8 years old! What are you doing back in town all of a sudden? There was a landlord dispute. It's only temporary. Thought it was time for a change. Just missed this place. Gonna take the change one. Maxie smiles as if to say, fair enough. Your grandmother was my neighbor practically my whole life up until she moved away. Don't you remember running over the road to knock on our door? You and Taylor used to. You must remember my kid Taylor? You were just about the same age. They used to get so excited when you would come visit your grandma. You'd both play together for hours. There's so much to take in all of a sudden that you can't think how to reply. Bit by bit. However, little pieces of memory flutter back to life, and none clearer than the image of yourself on the ground, helping to boost a kid onto the wall in Grandma's yard so they could jump off into a pile of leaves. Just like that, the picture of the mystery kid on your grandma's computer comes to life in your mind's eye, and you can't think how you had forgotten your friend Tay from across the road, which means that house across the street? That's your house? That's us. So that means you're back in your grandma's old house. That thing's been empty for years. I always thought it was funny, just like that your grandma was desperate to move away, but she never sold the house. Well, I'll be very happy to see her again, and Taylor, I think they'll be thrilled to hear back. They don't have too many, anyway, of all the people to run into. Max looks at you for a few more moments, smiling almost wistfully. You find yourself feeling a little awkward without knowing why. Maybe you've been away longer than you thought. Just then, Maxie jolts with a sudden realization and says, Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to be horribly rude and make it run for it because I'm just in such a rush to get to this meeting. Oh, but I'm so glad I got to run into you. For once, I'm happy there was a line at the donut place. I hope I'll see you around again soon, neighbor. They give you one last smile and start to hurry past you, holding tightly to the box of donuts. You hesitate, clearing your throat, but eventually you find the nerve to speak up. This is embarrassing, but I was trying to get to the meeting as well. I think I got a little lost. Maxie turned on the spot, looking suddenly very protective. Oh, hon, you should have said. You can't just be wandering about in the dark like this. You poor thing, you must have been getting frantic. Don't worry, there's no shame in getting lost in a new town. Come on, I'll show you the way. The gesture for you to follow, and you set off walking. I just figured you'd be on the lookout for the other cool young folks. Taylor would not be seen dead down at the town hall. I always tell them that's where the real action is, but they just won't hear it. Anyway, I think it's great you want to get involved. What makes you want to come along? I really want to meet people. I want to get my voice heard. I want to shake up the establishment. I just want to have the forest. Really? Oh, that's so sweet, Maxie says. They turn and look down at you with a sympathetic smile. A lot of folks don't have the energy for that particular fight. With everything else going on, I can't say I blame them, but it could be someone like you that kicks people into gear. Why? What else is going on? Maxie sighs. You'll hear plenty at the meeting, but don't you give up on the forest. If that's what you care about, make some noise about it. Remind people we're in a bigger world than they think. Oh, by the way, what's your favorite kind of donut? You look at Maxie questioningly as they flip open the lid of their cardboard box and present you with rows and rows of fresh donuts. You suddenly realize you weren't prepared for such a difficult choice. After an anguished moment, you pick custard filled, creamy, and comforting, chocolate with peanut butter frosting, rich and decadent, jelly and uncomplicated classic, strawberry and white chocolate, pretty and pretty delicious, plain glazed, nothing wrong with simplicity. The slightly crushed up one in the corner, I just feel sorry for it. I like that this is actually an option here, so that sounds actually like me because even though everything is all right, would still feel very guilty, to be honest. Maxie raises their eyebrows as you point out your choice. You sure? Oh, you're a sweetheart. Good on you for making sure it's not left out, they tell you. I'll make sure to save it in case they are all swiped while you're up there saving our environment. Okay, thanks, you reply, finding yourself starting to smile. You don't expect to have so much to think about before you even reach the meeting, but by the time you come inside of the town hall, not a tall building but square and solid with a warm amber light hanging just inside the crook of the roof, you realize you've fallen quiet. Maxie leads the way through the open doors into a pleasant wooden foyer which displays posters about local wildlife seemingly made by elementary school kids, racks of pamphlets about everything from pottery classes to information about taxes, and lastly, hanging either side of doorway marked meeting hall, a row of photos showing every previewed town council leader. You take a look at some of the faces as you head for the doors, but you are soon distracted by the buzz of voices that swells, swarm-like, as you push through into the hall. Here we are, Maxie announced. You nod slowly, trying to process the feeling of suddenly facing a room full of dozens of people in rows of seats, all making noise, some leaning across chairs to talk to distant neighbors, other milling at the side of the hall getting coffee from a catering table. No matter how you felt when you were just thinking about it, now that you're actually standing here, the sight is intimidating, exciting, uninspiring. It's intimidating, I guess. You manage to swallow back your anxiety a little. However, and you're about to ask Maxie where you should sit when, without warning, they call out the entire hall. Hi there, folks! You stand stunned as a few people look up, smile, and wave. A couple more turn around to shout back, Hey, Maxie! Nobody seems to think about anything of Maxie's own brand of ancients. Though you do see one or two pairs of eyes lingering on you once you're given their wave. A small town, Maxie murmurs in a softer voice, seeming to notice the curious onlookers. If you get any weird looks, it's nothing personal. Now let's deliver some donuts. You head for the snack table where Maxie puts down the box. After setting aside your slightly bruised donut where no one can get it to it, they cheerfully greet a few more people there, and as you're taking in the room from this new vantage point, you notice a tall, blonde-haired woman with sharp-framed glasses come in from the back holding a bouquet of flowers. She looks away just as Maxie glances up from their coffee. "Oh, Zoe," Maxie calls, suddenly beaming. They put down their cup in a fluster and wave to the woman. The woman gives a little wave in return, though as she approaches the table, she turns a few times to look at the empty table on the stage behind her, seemingly distracted. As she reaches you, she stops to give Maxie a kiss. The seconds they step apart, however, she launches into exasperated speech. "This day's never going to end," she says, eyes fixed on the stage. "Dina ordered flowers for the meeting yesterday, and I figured she wanted a couple of vases for decoration. But then today she comes in the store, doesn't call ahead, just drops in and tells me, no, they're for some big shot. They're a gift from the town. And it's an honor that I get to be the one who drives 2 hours to pick up hydrangeas from my supplier because this guy needs to see our best stuff. Anyway, I hope he's giving someone a lot of cash because then I might finally see one of those business grants they promised us a few years back." She stops to catch her breath. Without a word, Maxie offers a donut. She gladly takes it. "Thanks, hon," the woman says with a grateful sigh. "I need sugar. Anyway, I'd better get these to Dina." "Wait," Max interrupts, holding up a hand. "First, I want you to meet somebody." Maxie gestures towards you with a flourish. So blinks, apparently just noticing you for the first time. "Recognize her?" "I sure didn't. Zoe, this is a Mimi Birdfeather. Anthea's grandkid. Apparently, the both of them are moving back into town, though Anthea's going to be away for a bit. So for now, we just have one new neighbor. Mimi, meet my wife, Zoe." "Wow, Mimi?" As Zoe looks back at you, her eyes widen slightly, clearly surprised. "This is unexpected." "It's nice to meet you again," I say with a nervous laugh. "I know, right? I didn't expect it," I joke with a confident laugh. "Well, it's not like it disappeared off the earth," I say with a disbelieving laugh. "Nah, I would take the first one. I'm not that kind of a loud person, actually." Zoe nods, smiling politely. "We'll have to chat more in a minute," she tells you, "but I just want to run these flowers over to Dina. She's the head of the town council, and I'd rather stay on her good side." "You've been running around all day," Maxicata cuts in, astonished. "Why don't I take those and you can catch me up on everything that's been going on in the last 10 years? Before Zoe can protest, Maxie pulls the flowers out of her hands and rushes over towards the stage. There's a short pause. "Well, where does Maxie get all that energy?" Zoe wonders aloud with a small laugh. They spent all day training dogs, and then after that, they still want to look after everyone else. Smiling affectionately, she seems a little more relaxed, though you can't help but feel that she's in quite at ease. Maybe Maxie's just the more extroverted of the two of them. "So, Mimi, you're ready? You're really back in town?" she asks after a moment, turning towards you. "It has been a long time. Did you just move in today?" "Yep, I got back to the house this evening." "The house?" Zoe blinks, taking it back. "You mean your grandma's old house?" You nod. Zoe raises her eyebrow, once again surprised. That's strange. I didn't notice anything earlier," she says. "You must have really sneaked in. You're like a moving wizard." You laugh a little too forcefully and try to move on quickly from that subject. "So, I guess this means we're neighbors now," you say. "Yeah, it does." So he takes a moment to swallow the last of her donut before she goes on. That reminds me, sometimes I'll invite a few people over for a little get-together. It's just a way of winding down at the end of the week. I'm having a few people over tomorrow's evening, in fact, so you could always come over if you're interested. Sometimes it's just coffee and cake. Sometimes I'll give a class on gardening or flower arranging. I own the flower shop in town, see? I know your grandma liked gardening. She grew anything and everything, if I remember right. Are you interested in plants at all? You get the feeling that Zoe's rambling slightly in an effort to find something to talk about. Obviously, this sort of thing doesn't come as easily to her as it does to Maxie, but she's definitely trying her best. I love plants. In fact, I spend a lot of time studying them. I'm more interested in animals. My pet is more important to me than almost anything. They're okay, but I prefer doing other things with my time. Like, actually, I like plants, but I'm not good with them since I don't have a garden. And I'm sorry if you could hear something in the background. That's my cup of hot chocolate here. It's just so cozy to read and yeah, to drink something. But I try to be a bit more quiet here. I think I'm going to take the love plants facts. I can still learn a lot. Really? Her face lights up. I'm happy to hear that. I feel like having plants around is the easiest way to make any house happier. They make the place feel more alive, don't you think? Yeah, they really do. You smile to yourself, thinking of the forest, that tingle of magic that sets your hair on an end. After a moment, you blink and you see Zoe watching you with a smile, seeming a little more comfortable now. We have to talk more at some point. Share some gardening tips, maybe? I'd be happy to give you a tour of our greenhouse, and I'm sure you must want to catch up with Taylor at some point. You'd be welcome to visit. There's a short pause as you both fall silent. Well, I think the meeting is going to start soon, Sue says after a moment. It's a popular one. People are really worried about those development plans. The plans for the forest, you ask? A sudden jolt of anxiety running through you. Yes, that's one part of it, Zoe murmurs. But I think most people are worried about everything that's going to happen in the town. You're just opening your mouth to reply when there's a sudden hush amongst the crowd. You look towards the stage and see a group of smartly dressed people making their way to the long table, leaving the center place empty as they sit and start talking amongst themselves. There's the town council, Zoe tells you in a lowered voice. We'd better find some seats. You head to a space in the second row from the front, where Max is already sitting and engrossed in conversation with the person next to them. You struggle to see over the head of the man in front of you as his thick sandy hair blocks most of your view of the stage, but you manage to crane your neck enough to catch sight of the dark-haired woman in a wheelchair now taking her place at the center of the table. Here's Tina now, Zoe says, as the woman starts arranging a thick stack of papers. Even with a face full of someone else's hair, you can tell from Dina's expression that she is significantly preoccupied. She's not usually one for a late start. The council must really have a lot on their plate. As you watch Dina with growing interest, she looks up quite suddenly, and for a split second she seems to look right at you. I hold up my gaze, confused but curious, then my head suddenly afraid of being seen. I blink and look away, ignoring her. She's just looking at me randomly. Probably. Huh. Nah, I'm holding up my gaze. All kinds of thoughts race through your head as if after a moment she goes back to her papers. But only a second later you hear an electronic crackle as somebody switches the microphone on. With that, the whole room falls quiet. There is a moment in which Dina looks out over the hall, surveying the scene in front of her with a watchful eye. Then, after clearing her throat, she opens her mouth to speak. Hello, everyone, she begins in a voice that sounds as if it would carry well even without a microphone. As she addresses the hall, she puts on much calmer, controlled expression than you noticed before. I apologize for the delay. Thank you all for coming, even on such short notice. There are a few rumbling murmurs from the seated crowd. Whether or not Dina notices it herself, she doesn't falter in her speech. I think it's only right that we start by addressing what is probably the main concern for many of you here. The Alberobello of developments. You shiver slightly as the murmurs grow in volume, and all around you there is a ripple of sternly nodding heads. On the stage, Dina looks briefly at her papers before filling the hall with her voice. When the plans for these developments were announced last week, there was an immediate response from a lot of residents. It's fair to say people were taken aback by the proposal. Some were confused at the sudden announcement, some were worried about how they would be affected. More than a few of you came to us to voice your anger and your displeasure. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge those feelings, to apologize for the lapse in communication between ourselves and you as residents, and to offer a sincere promise that we, the town council, will listen to anyone who wishes to be heard. We will take every person's individual and collective concerns into account before the council votes next Friday to either continue or do away with the plans for the developments. That vote won't finish until we reach an unanimous decision. So if we're ever going to agree, we need to hear from you all first. You almost expect the hall to break out into shouts, but instead there are a few moments of stark silence. The mound of hair in front of you shifts about and briefly obscures Dina's face, but from the way the other members of the town council glance questioningly towards her, you can imagine they might have been expecting the same reaction as you did. After hearing her speak, your first impression of Dina is that she's obviously doing her best, but is a little overwhelmed by the situation. Very professional, but without knowing more about her, difficult to believe in totally. A good person, but not someone that I'd want to cross. I think she's doing her best, actually. You get the idea that the stress of being in charge at such a difficult time has been getting to her, and while she might have the qualities of a good town leader, they're bound to be tested in the face of apparent dissatisfaction. You think she has the right ideals, at least, but you know that sometimes that's not enough to get the job done. So she continued, softly clearing her throat again. Our plan for tonight is to answer your questions and listen to your feedback. But before we do that, we wanted, first of all, to try and put some of your minds at ease by anticipating some of your questions before they are asked. With that in mind, we're fortunately enough to have with us tonight somebody who knows more about Albero Bello than probably anyone, someone who has just arrived in Silvertree this evening to help answer your questions. With that, you watch as Dina's eyes sweep over the hall and seem to land squarely, unwaveringly on you. Oh no, this time you stare back at her, shocked but suddenly full of hope. Desperately tried to shrink. In my seat, suddenly terrified. Sat a little straight as if ready to defend myself. Wider gaze, certain it's just a coincidence. Um, oh, that's so hard to take here. Okay, I'm ready to defend myself, chat. You feel sudden heat burning in your face as you try to understand how anyone could know who you are. Doesn't matter. All that matters is that this stranger is about to pull you up in front of everyone, maybe exposing your secrets for the whole town to hear. You've never been more ready to stand your ground. Would everyone please give a big welcome to? You square your shoulders, outrage coursing through you. Mr. Frank Clarence, CEO of Clarence Industries. Whew, okay. You watch in glacial slow motion as the thick pile of hair in front of you stands up, soon followed by the man it belongs to. An instant later, as both your heart and time restart, that same man turns to face the hall with a cheery wave as it breaks into polite applause. Taking him in, you see that he's a middle-aged man, and though not overly tall, he's broad-shouldered, stocky, confident in his stance, and easily commands attention because of it. Although he isn't dressed in anything too flashy, you look from his leather boots to his glinting silver belt to his smartly rolled up t-shirt, shirt, sleeves, and recognize somebody who knows how to wear his money just enough for it to be noticeable, while keeping it subtle enough that it isn't the first thing anyone would notice. Despite the muted reaction from the crowd, he seems perfectly at ease at the front of the hall, greeting everyone with a smile. Mr. Clarence has made a special trip up to Silvertree just to be here tonight, Dina goes on, and he has said he's delighted to be able to discuss the development face to face. Would you like to come up on stage or... Nah, no thank you. I'd rather be able to talk up close with everybody. For the second time in a minute, you catch your breath. You keep your eyes on him as he says a few more things about how happy he is to be here, but really all you're listening to is his voice. After the morning in the forest, you didn't expect to hear it again so soon. Feeling yourself starting to shiver, you try to pay attention to what he's saying. I really hope that by the end of tonight, we all understand each other a little better. Our aim was never to disrupt anything about the town. Quite the opposite. We want to help Sewage grow, but I'll admit we overlooked the needs of the community when we made these plans. The announcement that we would be demolishing what seems like half of the town, I'm sure sounded extreme. Our plan was only ever to acquire and demolish any buildings that have been standing empty for years and replace them with something that benefits the town. Because that is the goal of Alboro Bello developments, taking those parts that are being wasted and transforming them into something that will serve the town. Soon, everything that bears the name Alboro Bello, including Alboro Bello Apartments, Alboro Bello Gym and Spa, and of course our landmark Alboro Bello Resort, situated with the parameters of the project's namesake, Alboro Bello Forest, will be the envy of every town for miles around. I'm aware that Silvertree is facing tough times, and I hope these developments will be like much needed a shot of adrenaline for a Silvertree economy. What with tourism, new jobs, and much needed improvements to infrastructures. But I think the real benefit will be just how beautiful this town will feel once our renovations arrive. All of them designed with your lovely natural surroundings in mind. He pauses, clasping his hands together in satisfaction. And as you watch him, the feeling that hits you stronger than anything is suspicion, intrigue, disgust, hope, fear. I'm very sus here. There's no way this guy with his easy smile and his smooth voice is trustworthy. He makes everything sound pretty perfect, but whatever he's selling, you're not buying it. But in spite of your personal feelings about Mr. Clarence, you think now that you've heard him speak that you get what this meeting is all about. Why the people up on the stage seem more like than a little apprehensive. It seems as if these plans have taken not just you, but half of the town by surprise, except that for most of them, it's the town itself, rather than the forest, whose future hangs in the balance. In fact, the forest seems almost like an afterthought amongst all of this talk about how much the town is going to change. You're not sure how it never crossed your mind before, but it seems obvious now that the forest doesn't mean as much to the people sitting around you as their own homes do. Of course, you think it must mean something to Mr. Clarence, after all. He took the time only this morning to hike pretty deep through the trees, but now that the bigger picture is starting to emerge, you realize that all of this isn't quite as simple as it seemed when you first set out from the forest in the direction of Silvertree. A moment later, you see Mr. Clarence opening his mouth once more. So then, I'd be delighted to answer your questions. Immediately, dozens of hands shoot into the air, including Zoe's just by your ear. Mr. Clarence doesn't seem phased. On the stage, however, Dina momentarily stiffens her shoulders. Mr. Clarence points to someone near the back. Yes, I was wondering why all those abandoned buildings couldn't just be used the way they are. Well, as you may know, plenty of them are damaged beyond repair, some by fire, some by neglect. The questions go on and on. Some askers happier than others with what Mr. Clarence has to say, but no matter the question, he seems to have an answer ready, and gradually people's hands start to disappear. After someone else question about the new competition to local businesses, Zoe puts her hands down, apparently satisfied. By the time he comes to the last person, the atmosphere in the hall seems to have relaxed somewhat, as if Mr. Clarence's explanations really have quelled a lot of people's most pressing anxieties. The more you listen to Mr. Clarence, however, the more questions start to nag at you. He's done a good job of explaining how the development will work, and he sounds pretty convincing in everything he says. Not to mention convinced that the developments will be good for the town, but there's still been almost no mention of the forest. There's certainly been no hint about whatever he might have been thinking this morning when you overheard him walking through the trees. All you know for sure is that he had some far, far deeper into the woods than he claimed the plans will touch. The question you're left with is whether to try and ask a question and risk being brushed off with another easy answer, or to stay silent and simply listen to what he has to say. It only takes another glance at Mr. Clarence's cheerful, smiling face for you to make up your mind. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll ask a question and let him say his piece. I don't think I trust him, but I'm going to ask a question just to see if I can catch him out. Even if I ask him something, I won't get a proper answer. Instead, I'll trust my perceptive instinct and try to get a read on him. In my opinion, he should know that we are here, actually. We are, I want to be the voice inside of his head, if this is even existing here. Tina is halfway through opening her mouth as you raise your hand, and just like that, you suddenly have her full attention. Yes, the person in the second row, she says, leaning towards you. Do you have a question? Yes, you reply. I'd like to ask something. Tina gives you a patient smile. Okay, go ahead. Face burning with determination. Yep, definitely determination. You try to gather all of your powers of persuasion as you clear your throat and prepare to speak in front of a crowd for the first time in your life. Finally, you fix your eyes on Mr. Clarence, whom you can't help but see is not the least apprehensive. You can only hope for your public speaking skills are good enough to rely on as you address the visitor. How much of the forest is going to be left after these developments? I asked, trying to summon all the eloquence at my disposal. Don't you care about the damage you're doing? I exclaimed, trying to draw strength from my outrage. Why are you interested in this forest and this town? I asked, relying on my new bond with the town for courage. Okay, he kind of answered this already. He wants to bring tourism back, so I'm gonna ask how much he's going to destroy the forest, actually. You realize as soon as you hear the slight shake in your voice that you don't have the confidence to really speak your mind in front of so many people just yet. Not when you're going up against someone like Mr. Clarence. With sinking feeling, you can already tell that you won't be able to keep pressing your point if he gives you too easy answer. That was hard to read. The forest? Mr. Clarence muses. Ah, yes, Alberobello Forest. Really big part of the inspiration behind our plans is it's a charming place. We just knew, or I should say, I knew as soon as I saw it that we could do something really special with it, and of course the town as well. We're hoping that by the end of our developments, there will be a little bit of Alberobello on every corner in Silvertree. That the forest itself will be just as much as a part of the community, with plenty there to attract locals and visitors from all over. He stops and seems to realize he's been speaking to the whole crowd now rather than just you, though something tells you he wouldn't pass up any opportunity for a sales pitch. Forgive my rambling. How much? Well, you'll be able to see from a blueprint exactly how much land the resort will cover. The plans are all on display here in the town hall, and you're welcome to look. Okay. All right. All you can do in response to this unexpected information is not. Realizing that by putting your ignorance on show, you might have helped make some people more comfortable with the proposed plans. Before you can even think about saying anything else, Mr. Clarence is already smiling in satisfaction. Oh well, if his motives are less than pure, at least he's not going to see as a threat for the time being. Does that answer your question? Yes, well, desperate not to let the question go without a clear answer about which parts of the forest will be destroyed, but your voice fails you. As you give one last defeated nod, you watch as Mr. Clarence turns back to the stage just as Dina has finished making sure there are no more hands in the air. No more questions? Dina asks when there are no more hands in the air. In that case, I'd like to thank Mr. Clarence for coming tonight. Oh, and please accept a small gift from us. Some flowers sourced by our local floristry Golden Seal as a memento of your visit to Silvertree. There is some scattered applause as Zoe's flowers are brought out and presented to him. You hear Zoe sigh as they're handed over. But once it's done, Mr. Clarence doesn't go back to his seat. Do you mind if I say one last thing? He asked, turning towards the stage. Tina glances briefly at the papers she has just started to rearrange. No, of course not, Mr. Clarence. Thank you. He smiles, looking back out at the audience. Well, you all made me feel very welcome in spite of your understandable concerns, but I don't think it would be fair to leave town altogether while this is being figured out. I want to get to know you, and I'm sure you folks would like to get to know me better if you are not sick of the sound of my voice. A couple of people chuckle, and Mr. Clarence grins a little wider as he continues. So I'm going to be staying in town until the deal's decided one way or another. If anyone does have questions, complaints, suggestions, I'll be here to answer them in person. A few muffled whispers play among the crowd. For a moment, as Mr. Clarence falls silent, even Dina raises her eyebrows, as if not even she had anticipated this detail. And as you watch the faces at the front of the hall, you find yourself suddenly struggling to take it all in. Mr. Clarence, the person whose voice prompted your grandma to send you away from the forest, has not only arrived in Silvertree on the same evening as you, but is going to be staying until at least the day of the vote in over a week's time. This wasn't just a one-off meeting to promote the benefits his company could bring to the town. It was just the very beginning of his visit. As this realization hits you, one thought comes to the front of your mind. Is he just staying to try and win over the town council? Does this mean he might be willing to listen to opposing views? I don't think so. Is he less confident than he seems about getting these developments approved? Do you have some other reason he wants to stay in Silvertree? I think he wants to get a bit more power, so people are not seeing this company as an enemy. You know what he said about answering people's questions, but part of you can't believe that's all he's planning to do while he's in town. Even just a week must be a long time for somebody as busy as him, but instead of going back home to look after his company, he's going to be here the whole time. Would he really take such a long absence if he didn't think there was something in it for him? What if this visit isn't just about answering questions, but the start of a whole campaign to try and win the town council support? And if so, then just how hard is he willing to fight? With a final wave, Mr. Clarence sits down, and your view of the stage is once again obscured by the back of his hat. Okay, thank you for letting us know, Mr. Clarence. Dina nods at him, but spends a good few moments just staring at the paper in front of her. It really looks as if she is struggling to process what she's just heard while keeping her composure. Eventually, however, she says in a perfectly steady tone, let's move on to community notices. The rest of the meeting seems to rush by, maybe because you already have so much on your mind. You catch a couple of announcements, a memo about a college scholarship the town council is offering to would-be students who have contributed to the local community, an open invitation from an ex-town council leader to attend his 80th birthday party at his house this Sunday, warning not to trespass on any local abandoned properties, a request not to litter, and a reminder about the town fair that will be happening in the park on Saturday in aid of a local charity that's hoping to clean up the town's lake and make it safe for swimming again. Everything else is kind of a blur. And that was the final point we had. So the floor will now open for anyone who wishes to speak. Dina moves her stack of papers aside in favor of a thick notebook and a pen, which she holds at the ready. Now's the time for questions, comments, or anything else you'd like to say. Anything that may be on your mind. People don't hesitate. Once again, hands shoot up, and Dina starts fielding questions. And you realize this is it. The meeting's almost over. This might be your last chance to get the attention of the whole town. Well, the whole room. You could make an impression on so many people. The only question is, how? You've never felt so unprepared, but this time at least you don't have the pressure of Mr. Clarence standing over you to psych you out. If you want to say anything, the only person you'll have to address is Dina. Whatever you do, you know you can't let this moment go to waste. I'll stand up, introduce myself, and announce that there's nothing more important than saving the forest. I'm a little nervous about saying too much, but I'll get up after secretly conjuring some flowers and tell everyone about the irreplaceable beauty of the forest. I won't say anything. Instead, to make a point, I'll make a bunch of escaped forest mice come pouring in. I'll just say a few words about myself. I don't want to draw too much attention. I'm going to introduce myself, like properly. As soon as there's a lull of activity, you get to your feet before you can talk yourself out of it. Tina looks up from her notes and gives you her focused attention. Apparently, you can make yourself seem a lot more confident than you feel. Hi, Hi, everyone. My name is Mimi Birdfeather, and I'd just like to say that I think the most important thing we have to do as a town is project Alberobello Forest from being damaged or destroyed by these developments. Straight away, the crowd reacts with curiosity, uncertainty, and disagreement. Dina at least keeps a neutral expression as she considers her reply. Yes, I think that's a very important point, she says with a nod. I respect the conviction you have about this issue, although I would hesitate to say that the forest is in danger of being destroyed. Say anything in particular that makes you feel strongly about this? Just that it's part of the world we all live in, and if there is nothing left of the natural world. But we don't all live in the forest, someone interrupts from the other side of the hall. We live in this town. We need jobs here, or we will. Please, everyone, wait your turn if you have something to say, Dina reminds the crowd. This is an open floor, not a debate. If you'd like to make your own point about something, you'll get a chance very soon. There are a few low rumbles from people around you, but no one else calls out. What were you saying, Mimi? Dina asked. Well, I know that we don't all live in the forest, but we're not the only ones that need to survive. The forest does as well. Surely we don't need a resort as badly as everything in the forest needs trees, the oxygen they make, which, we all need as well. Yes, those are valid concerns. What about preserving our natural landscape? Isn't it much more authentic experience to explore the forest as it is, rather than sit by a pool inside a log cabin? Whatever Silver Tree needs, I'm sure there must be other ways of getting it without having to lose the forest as well. With that, you take your seat, only then finding a chance to catch your breath. Everything you just said is all kind of a blur adrenaline, and it takes you a few moments for it to sink in that you just spoke in front of nearly an entire town. But judging by the waves of murmurs rippling around you, and by the slight look of surprise on Dina's face, you realize that you definitely made an impression with your words. As time passes, the number of people raising their hands starts to dwindle. Eventually, the room is still, and you see Dina glance toward the clock on the wall before leaning closer to her microphone. If there's no one else, she says, then I will officially conclude tonight's meeting. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts, she adds, nodding at the crowd as a few people begin to stand. And for a second, you notice her gaze linger around Mr. Clarence. Remember that you can leave a note in the suggestion box in the foyer, or talk to our information desk if you wish to get in touch with anyone on the council. And just a reminder that if you want to stay up to date with everything happening in the town, the local news site will usually be able to tell you. We also have a bulletin board in front of the lobby, and everyone is welcome to drop in any time to see it. That's all. Have a good evening, everybody. With that, the council begins to file off the stage. Feeling a little dazed, you get to your feet. Gosh, that was a long one, you hear Maxie say. You'd almost forgotten they and Zoe were sitting next to you. Mimi, how did you find your first meeting? It was fascinating. It was kind of disappointing. It was confusing. Nothing to be honest, but let's take fascinating. I'm glad. Maxie gives you a satisfied smile. How's that for the first night in town? Zoe meanwhile only sighs. Personally, I wasn't bowled over. I wish I could say I'd expected more, but Zoe shrugs. I guess I know Dina too well. At least she's trying. I did like what she's had to say, Maxie replies, more optimistic. That business fella, on the other hand, well, sure, Dina said a lot of stuff, Zoe says, but we both lived here long enough to be a little skeptical, hon. They share a look that tells you everything you need to know about how each of them feels. You're not sure what to say, so take a look around the room. You notice that while most of the townspeople are heading to the doors, the various members of the town council, including Dina, are just now coming back into the hall, this time at ground level along with everyone else. Turning your head, you also spot a group of strangers laughing and getting drinks at the catering table. Whatever they are talking about, they seem to be having a good time, and it occurs to you that seems like a good way to end a rather stressful meeting. Since it's getting late, you decide that you will probably only have time for one more conversation here tonight. But that's only if you still feel like being sociable. Otherwise, you don't see anything wrong with just heading for the door along with most of the others. What will you do? Talk to Dina on the town council? There's a little more I think I'd like to say them. Head over to the catering table. This could be a good chance to get to know more new neighbors. Go home early. I'm just too tired for everything. I mean, I would like to get some food, maybe even talk to some new people. Why not? You say good. You say a quick good night to Maxie and Zoe and make for the table, feeling a little apprehensive. As you come within earshot, you hear an ongoing conversation interrupted by some laughter at some joke you don't hear. Making yourself busy by getting a drink, you take in a little group person by person. You see two older men, about your grandma's age, a young woman, probably a few years older than you, standing with her arm around a man of the same age. And a guy around your age whose face is almost entirely covered by their curly red hair. As you look at him, you notice he seems to be hanging back a little from the others, smiling along but not really himself into the conversation. So then I thought, at this time of year, those aren't pumpkins. As the young looking man finishes punchline, the others practically collapse over the table, very nearly endangering what's left of the coffee. Only the red-headed stranger is more reserved in his laughter. I join in with the hysterically pounding the table uncontrollably. Wait until the noise has died down to introduce myself. While everyone is still laughing, I start telling my own joke. I would never do that. Sipping your drink, you wait as the group naturally settles down. Then, the conversation lulling, you look up brightly at everybody. Hi, you say simply, first getting the attention of the two older men. I'm new in town, so this is my first meeting. Is it always this dramatic? Not unless you get upset about kids riding their bikes too fast in the streets, one of the older men says with a wry smile. That's all folks usually have to complain about. Almost makes you glad to have something else going on for a change. The other man at his side scuffs slowly and nudges him lightly with his arm. Yeah, I trust you to enjoy something like this, he says, feigning a stern expression. You wouldn't be having so much fun if it was your store getting put out of business. The first man rolls his eyes, but in such a way that you can tell this kind of back and forth happens a lot between them. I'm just saying there's some people around here who could do with reminding about what's really important. Why do you get the feeling that I'm one of those people, Mitch? Well, not the squirrels. Stealing your birdseed isn't boarding in apocalyptic. Ah, shut up, Mitch, the man says eventually. Though you can see he says it affectionately as Mitch laughs. Finally, he turns to you with a very sigh. I think my husband was saying, no, it's not always this dramatic. He gives Mitch a sidelong glance, but soon breaks into a smile with another roll of his eyes. Anyway, this is no way to greet someone who's new in town, is it? I'm Lyle, the smart mouth genius is Mitch. It's nice to meet you. As you introduce yourself, you can see that your friendly behavior has earned you the attention of the rest of the group. You're glad you decided to trust your instincts. When in doubt, just say hi. Know that you have their attention. Who do you keep talking to? The older man, the younger woman and man, the red-headed stranger. Let's talk to this person here. Hi, when you turn to face him, how are you met with an empty space? Takes you a moment to notice that the stranger's quietly slipped away towards the coffee pot. Careful to give him some space, you move a little closer and wait for him to finish before you pick up the pot yourself and you pour yourself a cup. I think this is my first time trying coffee, you say, deciding that small talk is probably the best way to start. The stranger glances at you with a small, polite smile. I've been drinking way too much since my junior year, I said with a shy laugh. I kind of hate it, but I love it. If that makes any sense. You're not already bringing the cup to your lips. You're ready to give this a try. I gulp half of it down in one go, take a small, careful sip, take in the aroma first to get the full experience. Yeah, why not? The moment you swallow, your face makes it pretty obvious that you think this coffee is pretty good. My impulsiveness paid off. Disgusting. This is why I don't take risks. Way too hot. I'd curse pretty lot if my mouth wasn't full. Let's assume it's pretty good. You take another sip, pleasantly surprised and nod. I see what you mean. Weird, but not too bad. He smiles and offers to pour you a little more. You don't say anything else right away, sensing that he's still a little anxious, but after a moment he gets your attention himself. So, he says quietly, but he's already smiling as if anticipating something amazingly funny. Okay, here's a joke. So, what's an old favorite TV show? Wait, as a smile stretches even wider. Doctor Who. Realized at the terrible pun. I burst into laughter. I can't resist a good pun. I smile, but I don't really get it. It's been a while since I watched. Oh no, this is really good here. It looks almost surprised at your reaction, but after a moment, you see how happy he is that you like his joke. That took me way too long to come up with, he says, face turning slightly red. There's a short moment where you find yourself looking at him without really realizing it. You just have a feeling like nervousness, distraction, happiness, irritation. I'm still nervous, dude. Maybe you're just a little shy now. You're talking one on one, or maybe it's just something to do with a stranger himself. Whatever it is, it strikes you that you've both been silent for a little too long. At the very least, you should probably ask his name. So, what's your. You stop suddenly as you see a flash of terror in his eyes. Oh, sorry, is that what time it is? Sorry, I have to. My cat, sorry. Before you can open your mouth, he's already gulping down the last of his coffee and is rushing for the exit. Looking around, you see the others at the table have started heading that way as well, leaving you on your own and without getting the chance to learn everyone's name. Oh well, there's always next time. So this guy is having lots of cats. I don't think this is going to work out then, because I got birds. Stopping just to grab your secret crush donut, you duck out of the hall without talking to anyone else. Even with a few more people on the streets, the air feels quite still as you set off back home. You feel a little strange as you walk, overwhelmed maybe. There's so much to process about the meeting, but for now, you just let your mind breathe, thinking mostly about the way home thought through the black, cool night. Even though you're still curious about your new town, you're too tired to look around much as you make your way. All you can really think about is falling into bed. Before you before you know it, you're back on the street. You see no lights on everywhere. Looking over the house opposite your grandma's, you start to think how weird it is that at one point the people who lived there must have been so familiar to you. Now you hardly remember anything except in flashes, like quickly scrabbled drawings, not even about the little kid you used to play with. You just know their name was Tay or Taylor, as their parents call them now. Watching the darkened hour, watching the darkened house, you wonder what they're like now. What might be like to see them again, to meet someone your own age again, to maybe make a Mimi? For the second time tonight, you come to a sudden halt, but as you turn your head and you can't seem to find the source of the voice, after a moment, however, you glance over toward the other side of the street and you notice a figure standing in the glow of a street lamp. Sorry, it is you, right, Mimi? Yeah? They seem to hesitate, but then, putting their hands in their pockets, they step off the sidewalk and cross the road, stopping just a few yards in front of you. Not that their futures aren't cast in shadows. You can make out brown hair hanging just above their shoulders, pursed somewhat, chapped lips, and slightly wary eyes. From what you can tell, they seem to be just about the same age as you. Oh, Taylor? They take a short step forward, and what little light there is lands on their face, the more you look at them, though it's only in the space of a second, the more you think they do look a little like a kid. You sort of remember. But they're older, of course, and quite a bit taller. They don't quite smile as you approach. They just look at you for a few moments, seeming surprised. How did you know to call me that? They ask, pushing some hair behind their ear. I just ran into your parents. They look even more surprised then, but they nod, shifting from foot to foot. It's weird. I thought I saw someone moving around in there earlier. They cock their head toward your house, but I thought I just imagined it because no one's been in that house for so long. Then I looked outside just now and I saw you coming down the street. I wasn't sure if it was really you, but I just figured that if it was you, it'd be, cool to see you again. They give a little uncertain laugh, smiling for the first time, or at least you think they are smiling. It's still pretty dark. You remember me, right? They ask, sweeping more hair out of their eyes. I mean, we used to hang out all the time. Totally, I just had to jog my memory. It's still coming back to me. I haven't thought about this place in ages. Not until today, if I'm honest. Hey, I wouldn't either if I ever left, Taylor says with a shrug. I don't blame you for finding something better to think about in 10 years. It has been a long time, hasn't it? You say in genuine disbelief. I know, right? Suddenly they are laughing, and you see a spark of excitement in them for the first time. Like 11 years, it kind of doesn't seem it though. Like now I'm 18 somehow. What even happened? No idea. You say, laughing too. You share a look, a smile, like real old friends, but somehow the moment fades. The feeling of standing so close to someone but feeling so strangely distant was one you hadn't anticipated. So you're like back? You nod, wishing you could think of something else to add. Yeah, it's not something I expected. With that, you kind of fall back to just watching each other, neither knowing what to say. Taylor scratches their neck and looks down at their worn out sneakers. You hadn't expected to feel so awkward seeing them again. You realize the silence is going on. It's a little long for your liking. You're not too good at navigating moments like this yet, but you figure that you just saying something would probably help. You want to come in? I was pointing my thumb at the house. Maxie said the meeting wasn't your thing. Were you doing anything cool instead? And I would say, but is there anywhere to go in town? Actually, if this moment was already so awkward, I would just, I don't know. I would ask mm, what Taylor did, to be honest. Not really. They laugh, but it doesn't seem like their heart is really in it. Not like there's anything to do anywhere here anyway, but even if there was, I'd probably just stay home, I guess. They keep on fidgeting, all elbows and shrugging shoulders. You saw my parents at the meeting? They ask eventually. Yeah, just happened to run into them. Taylor nods a few times, not speaking. You notice them bite, even chew their bottom lip. They must have been talking about me then. Suddenly a little lost for words. You open your mouth as you struggle for a response, but Taylor cuts you off with a shake of their head. It's all right, Taylor replies. Seems to finally give up on movement and flops down onto the end of the wall with a sigh. I've got half the neighborhood giving me a pep talks the moment I run into them on the street. They talk about me a lot. It hits you how simple life in the forest suddenly seems. You can see Taylor has something on their mind, but have no idea what to do. Should you talk to them? Give them some space? At the end, you move a little closer and end up sitting on the wall beside them. For a few moments, you just look out onto the empty road. Today has brought back a lot of memories. I think it might be nice to reminisce a little and find some common ground. Seems Taylor doesn't have the easiest relationship with her parents. Maybe they'd like someone to vent to. I don't think I'm ready for an emotion conversation right now. Maybe I'll just stick to small talk. To be honest, I had the feeling Taylor doesn't want to, but it's been 10, 11 years, right? Yeah, I'm going to take this, I think. Oh, I can't take it. Oh, never mind. Ah! Remember earlier how we told you that the first chapter is available for free? This is the end of the first content. To find out what happens next, please purchase the remaining chapters. Okay, all right. Then we can talk about the stats here. It's quite interesting that you have some stats here. So between Townie and Loner, 52 and 48. I am lawless, okay? I'm a thinker. Kinda the same here. Witchcraft, we couldn't do much with that, I think. Each of these stats will affect by your choice throughout the game and may be raised or lowered depending on what you choose to do or say. There will also be choices with which test these stats, and having the right stats may allow you to take actions you might not otherwise be able to, while inadequate stats may cause unintended consequences. Read choices carefully to determine which stat or strats might help you gain your desired outcome. And be aware that having high stats in each category may not always be an advantage for every choice. Of course not. And then you can read about the different kind of trades, I guess, Towny Loner tracks your preference for either connecting with the town or in its characters that remaining more or your own. For example, choosing to spend time with other characters or to try and learn about the town may raise Towny, while spending time by yourself or focusing more on your own interests may raise Loner. Note that Loner does not necessarily mean lonely and Towny does not necessarily mean popular. I'm glad they're writing this down here. Then lawless and lawful tracks your tendency to either abide by laws or flout them. For example, choosing to follow rules given by another character, or to tell the truth may raise lawful, while choosing to break the rules or to tell a lie may raise lawless. Note that what is considered lawful may not always be considered right by every character, while others may not appreciate rule breaking no matter the justification. Then thinker and doer tracks your preference for either careful consideration or decisive action. For example, choosing to stand back and wait or to try to come up with a plan may raise thinker, while choosing to act immediately or to rush into the fray may raise doer. Know that choosing thought over action can sometimes be wise and sometimes be a waste of valuable time, while choosing action over thought can sometimes be helpful, sometimes be overly impulsive. That's also what I was thinking with the last conversation I had with Taylor. Witchcraft tracks your proficiency in all things magical. Actions such as casting spells, learning about your magic, or lingering in a magic spot can raise your stats, while prioritizing non-magical options may sometimes lower it. The stat will be useful in tests involving things like performing magic, recalling magical knowledge, or recognizing magic in your surroundings. I mean, our grandmother said pretty much the whole time, don't let them know that you're a witch. So I kind of want to hide it. Ecology tracks your knowledge and an affinity of the natural world. Actions such as spending time outdoors, learning about plants or animals, or expressing your love for nature can raise the stat, while showing a preference for urban surroundings or avoiding nature may sometimes lower it. This stat will be useful in tests involving things like identifying plants or other living things, finding your way through a natural area, or conjuring plants with magic. Influence checks your skills of influence and persuasion and your desire to have an impact on the world around you. Actions such as advocating for a cause, speaking in public, trying to make a persuasive argument can raise that stat, while avoiding confrontation or choosing to stay out of the spotlight may sometimes lower it. This stat will be useful in tests involving things like asking for other people's help, asking difficult questions, or convincing people to side with your plans. Precision tracks your attention to detail, powers of perception, patience, and focus. Actions such as investigating something closely, asking insightful questions, or moving very carefully can raise this stat, while choosing less subtle or cautious actions may sometimes lower it. This stat will be useful in tests involving things like noticing something out of a place, something following complex instructions, or keeping out of sight. Speed checks your speed and agility both physically and mentally. Actions such as running somewhere, acting impulsively, or rushing to finish things can raise the stat, while choosing to take a slower or less straightforward approach may sometimes lower it. This stat will be useful in tests involving things like moving quickly, thinking on your feet, or casting a well-timed spell. And last one, strength checks the strength of body, mind, and will. Actions such as lifting something out of your way, pushing through difficult terrain, and expressing strong emotion can raise the stat, while choosing to go around obstacles or remain more passive may sometimes lower it. The stat will be useful in tests involving things like moving heavy objects, making passionate arguments, or casting particularly powerful spell. There's also next one. Interesting. You can also have a love interest here. Relationship stats will be affected by your actions with each character and may be raised or lowered, depending on how you act or what you say, as well as how you feel about the other characters. A higher stat can represent a closer friendship, a stronger bond or allyship, or how well you have gotten to know someone, while a lower stat can represent a more distant acquaintance, an uneasy or distrustful relationship, or simply show that you haven't interacted much with the character. And so far we met Taylor, Maxi, and Dina, and Zoe, of course, but we're also missing 4 more people. So that could be also very interesting. I didn't know that these are dateable characters. All right. So this is the game, I guess. This is the game, and you can also you don't need to have a white background or sepia background. In my case, you can also have this in black. Could be also nice while reading when it's getting darker now outside. Also very nice for the eyes. But overall, as a text adventure with lots of decisions, I think I like this actually. I think I really like this with having a cup of tea or coffee and making it very cozy here. And it's like you're playing a game, but you're still reading, and it's very satisfying, at least for me. So yeah, that was the demo of New Witch in Town by Grace Card. I am very much looking forward to playing this game once it's out, and I think it's gonna happen next year, so 2023, around that, hopefully. I'm looking very much forward to it. I'm very excited for that, and yeah, so Burbles, thank you so much for watching New Witch in Town. And if you like that video, please leave me a like, and yeah, let me know if you like if you ever played a text adventure game, because I never did, and I'm curious to see.